So last night I watched Sonic the Hedgehog 3, the movie, and if you haven't watched it yet, be sure to put a like on this video and then go back to it once you've watched it because I'm going to be spoiling all of the movie. But these are just my first impressions based on watching it once. I have a really strong desire to go back and watch it, and I want to know what everybody else thinks of the movie, so I'll probably upload a more in-depth look at it later down the line. But as for first impressions, oh my god, this is definitely the best out of the 3 Sonic movies. My only major complaint is that the movie should have been longer, as I didn't get enough screen time with Shadow. Even though Shadow's in a large part of this movie, I felt like I wanted more time with him, even Sonic and the gang, and even the humans. I wanted the movie to be longer. But if that's the biggest critique I can give it, then you know I liked it. And one of the reasons I liked it so much was the beginning and how fast they got into the action. Now that we've met Tails and Knuckles and introduced Sonic into this world and got all that baseline lore out of the way, I feel like this is the first Sonic movie where we can just get to the meat of it without too much exposition. Yeah, we have the exposition with Shadow, but that's a lot more of a deeper storyline in my opinion. Not too deep, it's still a kid's movie, but that story with Shadow from Sonic Adventure 2 always stood out amongst the other stories in Sonic, and here it's no exception. I still love Sonic movie 1 and 2, but Sonic 3 just has the better story out of the gate, and I think they executed on it very well. And honestly, even better than in the games, because in the games, Maria is sick on the Ark, and we hear about Maria and Shadow growing up and playing and stuff, but the game is mostly focused on the fact that she's terminally ill, she got shot, and Shadow wants revenge, whereas this story has a lot more scenes of Maria and Shadow bonding in a less dire environment, because in the movie, Maria isn't ill and there isn't that urgency to cure her. So they are able to play and hang out without that constant worry of Maria overexerting herself or whatever. There's so many fun scenes of them just running around playing, and I love it. Another change they made is that Maria is on Earth instead of in space, which makes this line from the movie DLC even more confusing.
Beautiful city. It looks like how Maria described the Earth.
Because both movie Shadow and video game Shadow have both seen Earth at this point, so to use Burning Tokyo as the example of how beautiful Earth can be from Maria just doesn't make that much sense. But regardless, I think the way they implemented her in this movie was really good. Her death did seem kind of forced though. Like, all 3 of them were trying to escape, right? And it was just Shadow, Maria, and Gerald in this version. It isn't like raiding the whole arc or anything. It's just making sure those people don't get away. And the gun soldier just happens to kill Maria and nobody else. Like, that guy must really not like kids. But it is actually cool to see, as silly as this sounds, how fragile the humans are in comparison to the other Sonic characters. Because when you're seeing Sonic characters, and especially playing them in the video games, like bashing robots and going all super and stuff, you start to forget that all of their punches are supercharged and they're literally breaking solid metal with their attacks. So seeing Tom almost die because of one punch from Shadow did feel a little silly. It makes sense, but I was actually laughing in the theater when he was dying because I don't really have any attachment to the Tom and Sonic friendship. I know it's been building up for like 2 movies, but there's so much other Sonic stuff. He's only in the movies. The movies mostly focus on Sonic and not Tom, so like I kind of didn't care that he was dying, but it actually was a really smart way to parallel Shadow losing Maria to Sonic potentially losing Tom, and then Sonic and Shadow kind of coming to the realization that they need to save the world together felt a lot more natural than how it did in Sonic Adventure 2, where it's like Shadow's evil, then Amy's like, don't be bad, and then he's like, okay. So I did really like that. The whole talk with them on the moon was one of the highlights of the movie for sure, as well as the old general dying in a Chow garden. I don't know why, I just love seeing the human characters die. Maybe I'm weird, but him dying in a goddamn Chow garden? I just imagine the Chow music playing while he's dying, and it's just, I don't know. Another set of characters who ends up dying, quote unquote. I mean, Eggman died in the second movie and now he's back, so who's to say he won't come back for the 4th if Jim Carrey wants to? Hopefully he does. With the way he died in the movie, it seems less likely, but he kind of did seem definitively dead in the second movie, so who knows? The decision to keep Gerald Robotnik alive in this was so good, especially when you take into consideration Agent Stone and how he got jealous of Eggman being infatuated with his long-lost grandfather and how that affected the dynamic between Agent Stone and Dr. Robotnik. It gave that character something to do that was more meaningful than just being a side character in the background because he was in the previous movies. And that's another aspect of this movie I really like, is how they adapted these original characters that they created for the movie universe into these films. Because they have the potential to be very intrusive. A lot of people thought the wedding scene in Sonic 2 was dragging on a little too long, which, as much as I like that scene, I do tend to agree that it took up too much of a percentage of the movie. So I think they handled it a lot better this time, and they integrated the characters into pre-existing storylines from Sonic that they are reworking for this movie in a very elegant way, like having Dr. Stone be jealous of Gerald Robotnik. Really natural, doesn't really feel like a shoehorned in storyline. Same with how they brought back the wedding couple from Sonic Movie 2, letting Tom and his partner disguise themselves as them, making it so we get a little bit of them in the movie, but without having them linger, giving us more time for Sonic, Shadow, and most importantly, the Jim Carreys as Ivo and Gerald Robotnik. The stuff they were able to do with Jim Carrey as two characters was just so funny, and as usual, made him one of the big highlights of the movie, just like the first and second movie, although I do think his best performance so far is in this third movie. Another person who had a great performance was, of course, Keanu Reeves as Shadow. His voice felt very natural for the character. I never felt like I was listening to Keanu Reeves the Hedgehog instead of Shadow the Hedgehog. Honestly, his voice felt so natural for the character that it made Ben Schwartz seem not as good as Sonic. He's always done a great job. It's the same great job here, but I like Shadow better, so maybe I'm biased. I don't really have any bias towards Keanu in particular, but when he played the character, I very much felt like I was listening to Shadow, whereas with Ben, I feel like I'm listening to the movie version of Sonic, which is good, and obviously needs to be played a little differently because the origins of Sonic in the movie are a bit different than Sonic in the games. He's a lot more kid-like in the movie, so I get the different voice direction, and I'm not shitting on Ben, but just using him as a way to highlight how much I enjoyed Keanu as Shadow. Anyway, the direction they took Sonic in this movie was great. I loved that they kind of had some Sonic Heroes vibes with the whole Team Sonic arc and trying to learn how to work together. It worked really well and also highlighted the fact that, like, Shadow's a loner, but Sonic has a team, and the differences between that, and the comparisons between Shadow's arrival to Earth and Sonic's arrival to Earth. It was able to hit all the beats of, like, that era of Sonic games, Sonic Heroes, Sonic Adventure 2, while making it feel natural to the story and not shoehorned in, which is something I think they did really well with this. Obviously, with the Shadow storyline, there's so many elements. There's Black Doom, there's the Shadow androids, there's the space colony Ark, there's the Bio Lizard, and all of that is stripped away in the movie, and I think it's for the better. Obviously, with a shorter runtime, you can't get too in-depth or create too many plot points or else it gets confusing. But the elements they did choose to keep, I felt were the most important, and it's not easy to get that balance right, so I really commend the movie for picking and choosing which story elements to use from the games in a very smart way. And who knows, we might even get a little bit more, because at the very, very end credit scene, it's confirmed that Shadow is alive, and in the movie he came from an unknown meteorite from space. He has no idea what his origins are, and neither does anybody else, so that might open up the opportunity to introduce Black Doom into the movie franchise, either in a later movie or Shadow's own TV series, which would probably be the most likely place for that character to show up. But god damn, would I love to see Black Doom on the big screen. But at this point, I think I'm asking for too much, because the fact that I got Live and Learn and a recreation of Sonic Adventure 2 to an extent on the big screen is just wild. Only a couple years ago, Shadow the Hedgehog seemed to be this kind of banished side character. He didn't show up in Frontiers. They haven't really done anything with him since the 2006 Sonic game. And all of a sudden, we have Shadow Generations and Movie 3 and all this other Shadow stuff coming out, and it's just amazing to see. That, alongside Pikmin 4 coming out last year, has been making my childhood self so happy as a huge fan of Pikmin 2 and Sonic Adventure 2 Battle on the GameCube. But now I want to know what you guys have to say. If you've seen the movie, give me your opinion in the comment section below. I'd love to read it. If you haven't, what are you doing? Go watch the movie. But before you do that, don't forget to subscribe with notifications on, as more videos are coming soon. But with all that being said, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in another video.